The colonization of South Africa in 1652, Part 4. A Rainbow Nation. This destination was given to the nation in 1994 by the then Archbishop Desmond Tutu and was quoted by Dr Nelson Mandela in his inauguration as President of South Africa when he said, "We have triumphed in the effort to implant hope in the breast of the millions of our people. We enter into a covenant that we shall build a society in which all South Africans, both black and white, will be able to walk tall without any fear in their hearts, assured of their inalienable right of human dignity, a rainbow nation at peace with itself and the world." Besson in 1998 explained that Tutu was most probably referring to the Old Testament story of the flood, in which the rainbow symbolizes the promise of God never to judge humankind this way again. It could also resonate with the symbolism of the rainbow, which indigenous cultures in South Africa have. The Xhosa, for instance, regard the rainbow as signifying hope as well as the assurance of a bright future. From this, Baynes derived that the metaphor of the rainbow nation both informs and reinforces the vision of the nation building. Also Alexander. He also saw a secondary metaphor of the rainbow, in that its spectrum of colors is portraying the multicultural society in South Africa. Nevitt in 2015 concurred by stating that the colors of the rainbow are capturing the diversity that South Africa has in race, tribe, creed, language, and landscapes. Walker stated that the goal of a rainbow nation was to produce a new kind of South African. Guillaume and Penga reflected on the immediate effects of this concept. After the first free election in April 1994, South Africans shared a single nationality, a common citizenship, and a commitment to tackle the future together. A preamble to the widely claimed constitution called on citizens to remember both the suffering and the achievements of the past. The national flag and the anthem successfully blended historic symbols and songs. While this concept seemed to be filled with so many positive characteristics, nearing just 2 years after Guillaume and Penga warned against a simplistic way of just referring to the Southern African nation as a rainbow nation. The multilinguist and multicultural nature of South Africa makes being South African and trying to explain to an outsider what the term actually means complicated. Before South Africa is a heterogeneous society consisting of many communities, each with their typical cultures and language variety. Sometimes the only common ground for identity is that a South African lives in South Africa. Apartheid effectively created two separate political communities, one predominantly white people and the other one predominantly black people, living together in one country. In this country where almost every race waged war against each other, not only black people against white people, but also with people against white people and black people against black people. It would almost be impossible to bring all the hatred leaders in the likeness of Dr. Nelson Mandela. After being imprisoned by the white regime for 27 years of his life, he walked out a free man in 1990 and became the first president of democracy in 1994. From the outset, his approach was reconciliatory, and his words and actions were proof of that. with one of the most liberal constitutions in hand, which guarantees the right of individuals rather than collectives, such a cultural and ethnic group, the new democracy initially took small steps in the right directions. Although maybe unintentionally, the Constitution incorporated three fundamental Christian values, namely dignity, equality, and freedom. Initially, the different races struggled to get along with each other as distrust and enmity were the order of the day. Despite this, the idea of a rainbow nation was well accepted during the time of Mandela, as he was the big freedom icon. The shift he propagated was from a racially constituted system of the inequality and cultural identity to a national identity constituted as culturally diverse but with equality based on citizenship. He therefore took the first steps to building a new nation. During the time of Thabo Mbeki, Mandela's successor, the emphasis seemed to have moved away from the unity of the people of the land to a preference for transformation and economics. During this time, it also became clear that the ANC had not yet transformed its members to be part of the united country, as many of them believed and acted as if they were still in the struggle. There were also white people groups who did not want to adopt and now tried to destabilize the country, like the acts of a small group of one race can cause distrust against the race as a whole. There were also white groups who did not want to adapt and who tried to destabilize the country, like the events that happened at the 53rd ANC National Congress in Mangaung 2012. This caused more polarization, as the acts of a small group of one race can cause distrust against the race as a whole. Affirmative action contributed to the polarization of the different groups. Many white people abandoned the country because of that. There was, however, one element that would help the society to join forces: poor government performance. Slowly but surely, the different components of society started to join forces in forging a rainbow nation from the bottom to the top, as government was unable to do it from the down. Throughout the country, the media was utilized to convey the message of a single rainbow nation, a unified alcoholic drink, a unified nation. SABC TV used the slogan Simunye, meaning we are one. The South African breweries propagated a certain alcoholic drink with the words "one beer, one nation," a drink that is to present day connected to South African rugby. The notion of rainbowism, however, had Africanization in mind, reflecting the demographic character of the nation, which consists of more than 80% black people. Statics South Africa. Although the language that was bred in South Africa was Afrikaans, the black people in the country saw and still see it as the language of the oppressor, or even as a European language. As there is no unified language in the country, the language of communication is English. Despite this, government has decided on 11 official languages to assure that even a small people group like the Venda was covered. According to Rex, the recognition of cultural diversity actually enriches and strengthens democracy. Lastly, it can be stated that South Africa is still the country in Africa with the most white inhabitants, approximately 4.5 million, according to the 2011 census in South Africa. Even after colonization and forming part of this rainbow dream of proponents like Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. Conclusion. By reading the history of South Africa, it becomes clear that this country has its own unique story about colonization. Having in mind what the term colonization entails, we can conclude that South Africa, in fact, had 4 colonizers. 1. About 2,000 years ago, an official colonization by the black people group from the north. This colonization was ended in 1880 when the country was divided into 4 polities, 2 being ruled by the British and 2 by the Afrikaners. 2. 1652, an official colonization from the south by the Dutch VOC. This colonization came to an end when Britain finally took the country from the Netherlands in 1806, actually for the second time. 3. 1806, an official colonization of the country by Great Britain. This era came to an end when the country became a republic in 1961. 4. 1961, an internal colonization of the country by the white Afrikaners, which ended in 1994 when the country became a democracy. All these different groups that arrived in the Cape and started a mingle with each other and with the indigenous people saw the birth of a new people group in the country called the mixed race people. Added to that, a new language also emerged, which can at first be characterized as Pidgin Dutch. This language would become one of the dominant languages in the country, but is regarded by most black people as the language of the oppressor. Fortunately, after the 4th and last colonization of the country and after much pain and oppression and apartheid, the country became a democracy, establishing a rainbow nation where everybody had equal rights. Amidst much critique on the colonization of South Africa, and for that matter, on Africa as a whole, the aim of this video was to look at some unique features of the colonization. As it is obvious that the European and Afrikaner colonizations can and will never be justified, the video also wanted to add some perspective on the migrations or invasions from the north of the continent, which can also be classified as some sort of colonization, and which are mostly overlooked or ignored. The unique features of colonization in South Africa discussed in these videos have no intention of putting colonization in a good light, but merely indicated the outcomes thereof for this country. And that's it from Injibs Network. Stay tuned to our celebrity and gossip news.